at the movies with Tim Sika. I wait for it all week, and here he is again.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I've been seeing some interesting movies this week. I
Mm.
think all of them are pretty good. I don't think I'm going to be bitching too much this week. So I
Oh,
always
I
like when that happens.
I kind of like a bitching Tim Sika. It really
Well,
kind of spices things up a little bit.
there's going to be like some kind. Well, I don't know if it's called bitching, reservation. Well, when we talk about the first movie, you'll get some of that. You. Okay, I won't disappoint you then this week.
Okay, thank you.
All
The
right.
first movie, I've been hearing a lot about this. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
it's called Megalopolis. And this movie, they had some controversy with trying to fake movie critic reviews, like from people like you.
Oh yeah. That was some of the controversy. Original. I wonder if it was staged. Yes, it was. The original trailer had quotes attributed to high-profile critics like Roger Ebert and Pauline Kael. And it turns out that they were all fabricated. And Rex Reed, too, he was one of the ones they quoted about previous Francis Ford Coppola movies saying that they were really terrible, they were really bad. And then and those movies that were criticized turned out to be classics like The Godfather. Well, it was all fake. And apparently Lionsgate said they did it through AI. And that was their excuse that whatever. Anyway, it got people talking about the movie. So anyway, yeah, like you said, I am sure you've been hearing all kinds of stuff about Megalopolis. Its director Francis Ford Coppola's self-described, in development for decades, fable about a decaying metropolis called New Rome, which presumably is a metaphor for the current state of the United States. And it's about an architect played by Adam Driver, who's granted a license by the federal government to demolish and rebuild the city of New Rome as a sustainable utopia. think. I think that's what it's about.
Okay.
And I said that I'm sure you've been hearing all kinds of stuff about this movie, mostly stuff like hot mess, incomprehensible, awful, insane, off the rails, absurd, terrible. The director's lost his mind. One critic, even this morning, I was reading in my feed, one critic even called it a piece of starts with an S and ends with a T.
Yikes.
Stuff like that. Well, in a way, it is. In a way, it's all of that, but all of that is what makes this film, in a way, for me anyway, something to celebrate and to cheer about, because Coppola, well, first of all, he arguably takes the biggest swing in his career with this movie. He's in his 80s now. And I think he thinks this is going to be the last thing he does.
Hmm.
But this is the biggest risk he's ever taken as a filmmaker, both narratively and financially, because he financed this movie on his own. He sold off part of one of his wineries,
Wineries.
right? 120 million dollars, and I think he's even picking up some of the tab for the marketing too. Anyway, now all of that doesn't mean that Megalopolis is necessarily a good movie, but it is a movie that literally stops you in your tracks. I only wish I had a chance to see it again before talking to you about it, because its language, the style in which it's told, it almost forces you to react negatively to it, because it's a story done in a particular style, in a style in which we really are unaccustomed to receiving as moviegoers. In other words, it's hard as hell. It's hard as hell to follow. You're going, most of the way through it, you're going, what the hell? And yet, ironically, it does have a conventional beginning, a conventional middle, and a conventional end. So right
Huh.
there, I suspect something's going on. But what it is, I couldn't tell you, because watching Megalopolis is just a very frustrating experience. It's almost designed to make you want to dismiss it out of hand and to reject it entirely. But that's only, I think, okay, I think if you refuse to go deeper into what's there or what might be there, now there may not be any there, but for now anyway, I'm going to give Coppola who is a master filmmaker, a genuine artist, and a cinematic risk taker, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so for me, the jury's still out on this one until I can see it again, because after having let this movie settle for 5 days now, I saw it on Monday.
Hmm.
I'm still really at a loss, Kim, to know how to talk about it. But the thing about it is that I can't stop thinking about it. And I think it's because the reactions to it are so extreme, both pro and con. I will say for now that I do believe it to be definitely a singular work of art. And I believe that because it's so polarizing. You know, I think that's what art is supposed to do. Or great art tends to, you either love it or you want to destroy it. Okay. And whenever a creative work of any kind provokes such an exclusive response from the receiver of the work, in this case, the film goer, the film critic, to me, that in itself is indicative of something. I'm not sure exactly what, but to me, it's a sign that at least I, as a film critic, I need to look deeper. I remember the first time I looked at a Francis Bacon painting or a Jackson Pollock painting, and I thought, ugh, I didn't like them at all. But to make a long story short, when I did dig deeper, I began to at least think a little bit. I started to understand the artworks more and came to appreciate them, and maybe even learned a little bit about myself as to why I was so reactionary, why they like push my buttons. And the same goes for music too. You know, Wagner, his Ring
Yeah.
tetralogy. Try being first exposed to some of that music and tell me you don't want to go run away screaming. And it's the same with some of the films. You know, since we're talking about movies here, those of, you know, Pierre Pasolini, even Orson Welles or Renoir, his Rules of the Game is like, I still can't figure that one out. Or the films of Godard or Stanley Kubrick. I would love to get Coppola in a recording studio alone for 4 hours, because I have like 30 pages of questions I would love to get some answers to. So I don't know, what am I yammering on about here? I'm thinking right now and leaning towards calling Megalopolis some sort of masterpiece that frankly is beyond my grasp or scope of understanding. Would I recommend it? I'd say to people thinking about seeing it, what I'm saying to you now, and let them decide on their own. But I would caution them to be, number one, fully rested. Make sure you're like not tired at all and you're fully awake, and to keep all personal expectations in check, except the one to be challenged, because there's never really been a film like Megalopolis or any I can think I would compare it to. God, if we only had a couple of hours, I'd love. I would have so much more to say
I
about this movie.
don't feel like I'm understanding what this movie really is. And I
I
wonder, I have a
right,
question. The question for me is,
yeah.
it seems like what you're saying is it's really on the viewer to work hard to understand it, but should it really be on me to understand the movie? Shouldn't it be more obvious?
Well, I guess good questions. I guess it depends on why you go to the movies, what you expect to get out of movies. If you go to movies to be entertained, which is like the prime reason I think most people go to movies, then yeah, maybe it should be a little more obvious. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. What makes me think there's something special here, though, Kim, is the film's structure. It there it has this on the nose messaging that is very clear in the form of these silent film style interstitials that appear on screen from time to time with sayings by like Shakespeare and Plutarch and other ancient philosophers, with a seemingly unrelated, inscrutable, and at times seemingly vacuous narrative that initially appears as though it's from another movie that comes from another planet. I
Hmm.
don't I don't I don't know. I don't know. Did
Would
I
you
answer your question, the
would
one
you
you
call it
asked?
a drama, a horror, a comedy, and one of those epic blockbuster movies? What
Yeah,
would you
well,
classify it as?
I guess you could call it all of those, which makes it
Wow.
even harder to classify. It's kind of a science fictiony fantasy fable. It has elements of some of these, even these DC Marvel movies
Okay.
in its scope. It's I just don't think it doesn't surprise me actually, but a lot of my colleagues are coming out of this movie saying, "Oh my God, it's the worst thing that I've ever seen." I think I don't know. I just think it's significant when movies provoke those kinds of exclusive responses. I don't know. I find that interesting, and I like
Yeah.
to look a little further to see as to why
Ooh.
that is. We always tend to want to dismiss something we don't get, or something we don't understand, or something
Sure.
that drives us crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
this movie does all of that, really. So I'm good. You know what? I'm going to go see it again today at 5:30 because I need to see it again before I vote this year in my respective awards groups. Yeah.
Ricky Aubert says he thinks that he'll have to rewatch this movie. He also says, John Watson says, sounds like a film they'll be analyzing in film school.
Yeah,
So,
I think John is correct about that. Yep.
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Eric writes, I was a theater major and loved my cinema class in college. This one would probably be fun to see. So,
Yeah, yeah, fun to see if you watch it with that fun to see cap on. It's so funny, Kim. I saw it with some actor friends of mine, and actually a director and a DP friends of mine. And it's interesting because as we were all watching it, I noticed my director friend was really enjoying the first hour.
mm-hmm.
I was going nuts during the first hour. And here's the thing. After an hour, the movie kind of clicked for me, and I was there. After that same first hour, he just completely thought the movie went off the rails, and he wound up hating it. So it's
Wow.
we watched the same movie, but at the
In
same
reverse.
point in reverse. So
Yeah.
what is that? I think that's interesting.
B.A. Ware says, throws down a quote from Francis Ford Coppola. Anything you build on a large scale or with intense passion invites chaos.
Oh yeah, that's a great quote. Yeah, that's
Mm.
a great. Yeah, he's absolutely correct. Obviously, I think this movie is going to really provoke a lot of conversation for decades to come.
Jim wonders if you're not giving Francis Ford Coppola too much credit here. Jim writes, he made some great movies, but this seems like a POS. He said he also
Yeah.
read that the director, Francis Ford Coppola, was chain smoking and harassing women on the set as well.
Well, okay, there's two issues here. The first
Mm-hmm.
one is, yeah, I may be giving him too much credit.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite possible. But I look at his body of work, and I know he's done a lot of misfires, but I know why he did those at the time he did them. I've always found him to be a great filmmaker. So right now, because this film has provoked such an exclusive response in me, I'm for now, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I could be completely off on that.
Yeah.
The other stuff about the
Right.
controversy, Coppola's suing Variety for printing that story about quote unquote sexual harassment. The woman, I think, and I think her allegation should be taken seriously, but the woman that accused him was the only one that had any issue with him on set. Everybody else said, well, they never noticed anything. And he's suing Variety about that. And what was the other thing in that comment? That I think that's a separate issue. I think those two things are separate issues. They're both.
Chain smoking and weed, I think, and harassment. Those were the
Oh
issues.
well, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe he did. Maybe maybe that
Maybe
maybe
that's
that's
why
why
the
the movie.
movie's like this.
Maybe that's why.
Elise,
Yeah. Go
Elise
ahead.
is our show chef and baker. She says, thoroughly confused and intrigued, will definitely go see.
There you go.
There you have it.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. I am also
Okay.
confused about this one. Let's move on, though, to a movie that I'm already being asked to go see. This one is called The Wild Robot.
Yeah, I think this one's going to grab the Oscar this year for Best Animated Feature. Not.
Okay.
This is the one so far, anyway, that would get my vote. Okay, it's based on a series of books of the same name by Peter Brown, and it's about a female robot. Her name is Roz, which I think is such a great name for a female robot. Anyway,
Roz. Yeah.
Roz, R-O-Z, superbly voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, who's shipwrecked on an uninhabited island, right, where she has to adapt to her surroundings. And part of that adapting is that she finds herself building these relationships with the local wildlife, and where she also becomes the adoptive mother of an orphaned gosling whose family she accidentally was responsible for killing.
Yeah.
That sounds dark, but I loved this movie so much. It was charming. It it dazzled the senses. It was spectacularly animated. It's a standout example, Kim, of technological movie making that also deeply touches the heart. And it's a film whose message of cooperation and connections with nature and with other people could not be any more timely. It's funny because my reaction to the film upon leaving the theater was in sharp contrast to so many of the films, the dystopian films that seem to be flooding movie theaters these days, was one of genuine hope. Sounds corny, for the human species and for our future on this planet, even though the characters in the film are automatons and animals, specifically this female robot, a red fox, a mother possum, and an orphaned goose. So this is an excellent movie, everybody. You see it with friends, see it alone, see it with family. And as family films go, this one's just about one of the most sophisticated, smartest, wittiest, and most touching movies around to see with your spouse and or your kids. I cried at the end. I'm crying a lot at movies these days. I don't know what that says, but anyway, this, even though I'm very hit and miss on predicting movie awards, I think this one's going to win this year's Best Animated Feature Oscar. We'll see if I get that one right, because after all, it's still early in the awards races. But what a wonderful film this is! It's just, I can't say enough about The Wild Robot. Yeah.
Well, we read the book, the first
You
book.
did?
I didn't know there were more than one, but we read the book.
Yeah.
That was like maybe first or second grade, and my son is in fifth grade.
Uh-huh.
And it had been assigned at school, and so we read it at home, and we really enjoyed it. And so I think there's already excitement building about this movie here. So I'm so glad to hear you say that it was enjoyable like that.
Yeah, it was more than enjoyable. It was transportive. I mean, it was transportive. It just takes you to this another world, and you get lost in it. And by the time, oh gosh, maybe because I love animals so much, but God, the last, never mind. I'm glad you can't see me moving and in real time here, because I get misty eyed when I think of the ending. It's a beautiful film.
I wish I could see you. Someday I'm gonna get you on camera. I know we're radio people, but
I know.
All right, the next one is a movie called Notice to Quit.
Yeah, a comedy is up next, and it's a pretty good one too, I gotta say. I guess I was surprised, because you never know with a comedy, but this one is it's a contemporary comedy. It's smart and funny, and it's relatable. I'll explain that in a bit. But okay, in Notice to Fight, actor Michael Zagan of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, he plays a guy named Andy Singer. He's a struggling New York City real estate agent who's caught in this cycle of renting really crappy apartments, right? And to add to this cycle of what seems like this endless series of mishaps and misfortunes in this guy's life, his world further comes crashing down around him. He's divorced too, by the way, when his 10-year-old daughter, his estranged 10-year-old daughter, just shows up unannounced on his doorstep in the middle of his, on top of everything else, being evicted from his own apartment. Written and directed by Simon Hacker. This is that rare comedy that just works, and it works because it's a human comedy. I think anybody who has ever experienced being stuck in their life in a place where they feel is never going to improve is going to relate to this movie. It is just funny, and it works. It's sharply written, it's sharply performed, it's well structured. The direction is just pitch perfect. It's kind of manic and edgy and astringent, but it never ever gets annoying or grating. It just hits my sweet spot for comedies. I just laugh when I think about this movie. The main character of the piece, his name is Andy. He's played by Michael Zagan. He's having so much bad luck, right? But he's so sincere. He's trying his best, and you really feel for this guy. But all of his so-called bad luck is really, you can see this because he can't see himself, but you can see that it's just a result of his being unable to see how his way of being, how his way of showing up in the world is really contributing to all of that so-called bad luck. He's kind of his own worst enemy, but he can't see it. And so he keeps spiraling downwards. But you know, we never laugh at, this is the other thing I like about the movie. We never laugh at him. We laugh with him, alongside him. We laugh at the behavior that we can identify with, because it's relatable human flaws. And it's a wonderful relationship story. It's a father-daughter story with kind of like a Paper Moon feel to it. It's a father-son relationship story. Robert Klein is in this. It's great to see Robert Klein in a movie. He plays Andy's father, and there's some interesting things kicking around in that relationship. And the other thing I like too is the movie captures that thing about a failed marriage, a divorce and a failed marriage that produces a child, which means you're never really ever severed from your ex, because there's a child involved, and your connection with your ex in that regard is always going to be there. So I just love this movie. It's one of the best comedies I've seen that takes an affectionate look at personal failings, and it's just funny. And the ending is amusingly unresolved, which just about put the icing on the cake for me in what was already a very, very funny movie. I thought, oh, it's going to do this. It's going to tie up these loose ends, and it doesn't, and it makes you laugh. The final scene is just an out loud guffaw. It's a terrific movie. Notice to Quit. This is
in theaters.
In theaters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move to this one. This is called In the Summers.
Yeah, another interesting movie, a very, very personal film. It's directed and written by Alessandra La Corazza Samudio. She's making her feature film directorial debut. And this is a very simple but very affecting story about love, a complicated familial love, to quote her. I think she's the one that I remember reading that about. She said that somewhere. Anyway, the story is also very simple. It centers on two sisters at various stages in their lives, from the time they're both children to becoming adolescents to young women to adult women, navigating these four alternately fraught but also loving summer visits with their divorced father in New Mexico. The girls live in California, and the rest of the year they live with their mother, who's out of the picture during these visits.
This is very much like my life, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, yeah. Wait, well, should I ask you to talk about that?
Oh, no. I mean, we would go, my dad was very much involved, but he always lived in a different state. So my sister and I would go see him for a month every summer. So
wow. Yeah, there you go. So we have here this movie, which is this series of summer visits with the dad, and as we experience them, as each summer unfolds, we learn all about these characters and what the relationship to their father is, why maybe there was this divorce in the first place. We watch the characters grow, we watch them change, and how this time that's passed each summer in each summer visit affects these girls, affects their relationship to each other and their relationship to their dad. It's a very interesting and absorbing. It's a quintessential Sundance indie. It's very emblematic of the kinds of films that were the reason the Sundance Film Festival was created in the first place. In fact, it won the Grand Jury Prize for Drama this year at Sundance. It's quiet, it's unassuming, it's moving, it's very powerful, it's very well acted with a very personal feel and vibe about it. A lot of it, in fact, came from the actual experiences of the filmmaker. It's a really special movie, a kind of cinematic tone poem to the messiness that so much of the time is a part of family and family connections and family dynamics and those lifelong ties that you can't break them. They can never be broken. So it's a film I highly recommend.
Oh, let me type that in. Highly recommend. Okay. Got it. The next one, I hadn't heard of this, but this has got a big superstar at the top of it. It's called Lee.
It sure does. It's a biography, a dramatic biography of American photographer and photojournalist Lee Miller, who was a World War II female, obviously, correspondent for Vogue magazine, and who took pictures of world events, particularly of the 1940s, events like the London Blitz, the liberation of Paris, and in my opinion, of most significant note, the concentration camps at Buchenwald and Dachau. And this, it's interesting, Kim, the story of the making of this film, which took 8 years,
Wow.
and a deep, committed, singularity of purpose approach on the part of its star and producer, Kate Winslet. It's practically as interesting as the film itself. The hurdles that these women who made this film had to jump over and through. Wow. Anyway, all that backstory you can read about online. But as to the movie, it's very good. It's very conventionally told, unlike Megalopolis, in a kind of Hollywood standard biopic fashion. The way it's done in the movie is that Lee is at the end of her life and she's being interviewed by a journalist who finds her work significant and wants to do a story on her. And so the film is this series of flashbacks which reveal a woman who was a fashion model in New York City in the 1920s before going to Paris, where she became a fashion and fine art photographer, and by her own admission was good at only three things: drinking, having sex, and taking pictures, which I thought was funny. And the film, in its early phases, went through a series of writers. The development process was hell for these women, and the end result kind of reflects that a bit, but the acting is so good. Winslet is superb as always, and Lee Miller's story is very interesting. I admittedly didn't know about her very much. She was a woman who photographed war, action, as it was happening. She put herself in harm's way. She was in the thick of it, and she faced a lot of sexist rejection from the military. Women can't do those things. Right. They didn't do those things. I don't even know how many women do those things that she did today, that she did then. But her story's so interesting, and there are scenes of such dramatic power, like when Lee witnesses firsthand and photographs American wounded soldiers in field makeshift hospitals, and even more so when she arrives at the German concentration camps and photographs some of the most shocking and iconic images of the Holocaust that, as she says in the movie, once you see something like that, you never, ever, ever unsee it. Yep. And scenes like these produce overall a very strong effect. And Lee Miller's story is an important story, which I think needs to be told. So biography buffs, history and World War II enthusiasts, Kate Winslet fans, and who doesn't love this woman and her extraordinary talent? I love Kate Winslet. And she proves herself to be this dogged determination filmmaker and producer to get this story on film, and she does it really, really well. And I think anybody who loves any of these things will love this movie, Lee. She's been going around the talk shows talking about it. I think she was on Colbert the other night, and so I hope people go see Lee. It's a good movie. And unlike Megalopolis, it's easy to follow. You know exactly what's going on and why. Anyway, that did not mean to be a cheap shot to Megalopolis.
That's all right. We'll recap it. We'll start with Megalopolis because you did. You said it's...
Yeah, what did I say? How are you going to summarize all what I said? I don't even remember what I said.
You said this. You said it's something to celebrate. It stops you in your tracks. Watching it is frustrating, and you were at a loss. You said you can't stop thinking about this movie, though. You think it's a singular work of art because it's so polarizing. You want people that are going to see it to be fully rested and keep your expectations in check.
Yeah, that's about what I said.
Are you recommending?
Well, I'm recommending it with all those caveats. I'm afraid to recommend this movie because I don't want people to think I'm insane.
Okay.
All right.
The Wild Robot. You said this is a movie of message, has a message of cooperation and connection at a time when we so desperately need it. You think it's going to get Best Animation Oscar this year. Yeah. And you said it's an excellent movie. You cried. You called it transportive, and you highly recommend this one.
Yes, indeed.
Notice to Quit. You said it's smart, it's funny, it's relatable, it's a rare comedy that just works. About somebody stuck in a rut. You said it's sharply written and performed. It's a little manic and edgy, but not in an annoying way. And it hit your comedy sweet spot. That's a yes for you.
Yes.
In the Summers, which appeals to me, you said this is a quiet, unassuming movie, powerful but a personal vibe. It's a special movie, and you don't just recommend it, Tim. You highly recommend In the Summers.
Indeed, I do. And you know, if you when I described it, you said that you could relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll probably find special meaning in it. Yeah.
Here come the tissues for me. Oh my goodness. And then Lee, a story you said that really needs to be told. You said Kate Winslet is amazing in this one. The acting is so good. The story, the biopic of Lee Miller, you said is so interesting. And there's a lot of power in some of the scenes. You love this movie and you hope people will go see it. Lee.
Yes, yes. So I pretty much, I mean, there's something to recommend
Yeah.
for everybody this week. I don't think, and yeah, as far as Megalopolis goes, yeah, I don't even know how to tell you when somebody says to me, did you like it? I said, well, that's like asking me what the meaning of life is. I don't know. I mean, I have some ideas, but I don't know. So anyway,
Which is such a weird answer for a movie because you feel like you either liked a movie or you didn't like the movie. There's really no in between.
Right. I liked aspects of it. And I'm going to, like I say, I'm going to see it again today. And if, I may just, go with the naysayers and go, oh my God, this is garbage, but I got to see it again. I have to see it again before I reach any conclusions. Anyway.
I'm going to ask you again next week what your second opinion is.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. You
all
do
right?
that. Oh, great, Kim. Thanks.
Tim, you've given us some great things to chew on and some great information today. And as always, you are awesome. And thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks.